but that's okay. Hey, so it's Friday afternoon. This is our last teaching session of the day, but it is a pretty important one. We're going to talk about your essay that you're writing for this module. So you're just in the first week. You're not behind yet, unless you haven't read the stories, in which case you are behind. So your only job this week was to learn what the assignment was and to start reading the stories and to mark them up and be thinking about how you're going to organize your essay. So,
I still need to mark up and read.
So somebody tell me, what is the prompt? What are we writing about? Who can tell me?
How tractors and cars change the world.
Yes, how they changed themselves over time and how they changed the world. Okay, so that is what you're writing about. And you're basing it not just on what you know, but on these two stories. One in lesson 4.01, one about tractors. And then in lesson 4.02 today, you should have started reading one about cars. So there's two stories you have to read and use evidence from. Looks like I'm seeing lots of nods. You guys understand that. So today, then, I'm going to share my screen and show you what you're working on today. And it's not due today. It's not due until Monday, but I'm going to tell you this is more than a one-day assignment. So if you look on the calendar today, it's Friday, January 6th. It's my son's 30th birthday today. I can't believe he's 30.
Happy birthday to your son.
I will. He's in Mexico. So I just sent him I sent him pictures. I decided to send him 30 pictures of his life. Anyway, if you see on here, today's lesson is 4.02 word meanings. You don't have the assignment due until Monday, but it says here, Zoom for writing lessons, structure of the essay, 4.02, page 6. So let's go to that lesson 4.02. We can get there by clicking right there on the calendar. Or we can go to modules, go to language arts modules 4.02. So here it is. It says on page 6, we're going to learn about the structure of an essay. Perfect plans. Way to go. You've brainstormed for your informative writing. The next step in the writing process is planning. This is when you create a plan to organize your ideas in response to the writing prompt. And I think most of you did a pretty good job of understanding the structure of the essay. And so this is the same structure. It's just that the evidence is a little different than last time. So go through each slide to see how Carolina planned her informative writing about how water transportation changed the world. So her topic is really close to your topic, and they've got an example of her essay to show you what a good essay would look like. So first of all, Carolina came up with her controlling ideas. She knows this will guide the rest of her essay. Her controlling idea, and I call that a thesis, using words from the prompt, and has two topics she will focus on in her body paragraphs. So here was her prompt. How did water transportation change the world? Use evidence from the text. And here is her idea. Throughout time, water vessels have been used for many purposes, including trade and leisure, and have changed the world for the better. So she added a little bit of her own opinion. We're going to be practicing coming up with a controlling idea in a minute. You're going to do that today. Then, now that Carolina has her thesis, she plans the parts of her essay. She needs a hook to begin her introductions. The hook should reel your audience in and make them want to keep reading. If you remember in the past, we've often used a question like, have you ever thought about how transportation has changed the world? Or you probably get in a car every day, but you forget that 100 years ago, people didn't have cars and couldn't get around as easily as they do now. For them, a trip across the city would have been a big thing with a horse and buggy, right? So think about an interesting hook. I think the biggest thing when you're writing an essay like this is you can do it two ways. One, you can say, what do I have to do? Okay, Ms. Laws, let me just write as little as I can and not care about it at all because this is stupid. Or two, you can say, wow, okay, so I have this prompt about transportation. I've never really given it much thought. What do I find interesting about how transportation has changed? What might my reader be interested in? And what can I write about that would matter? Okay, so you need to ask yourself, like, so what? Why does it matter that transportation has changed the world? And maybe your answer is, well, it's made the world a lot better in a lot of ways. Or maybe your answer is, I know about global climate change and it's actually caused a lot of problems in the world. But you're going to read the stories and try to form an opinion about like, what do you think's interesting about that? And then come up with a hook that's going to grab your reader. So Carolina chose this hook. The use of transportation has had an immense impact on humankind and the way we live. You could use one like that transportation has had a huge impact on our lifestyles. We live very differently now than people lived in the past. All right, hooks could start with an interesting fact, a definition, a quote, a scene, or question. Here's all different examples of those kind of hooks. Today, you will be writing a hook or thinking about your hook that you're going to write for your essay. Okay? Could be a question, could be a quote, could be a scene. If you wanted a cool quote, you could just open up a new tab and say, quote about how transportation has changed the world. And you can put like famous quote. Oh, let's see, transportation quotes. If we drive down the cost of transportation space, we can do great things. Elon Musk. Here's one by Amelia Earhart. Among the marvels of modern invention, that with which I am most concerned is, of course, air transportation. That's not really our topic. I said that if an alien came to visit, I'd be embarrassed to tell them that we fight wars to pull fossil fuels out of the ground to run our transportation. They'd be like, what? Neil deGrasse Tyson, that's a good one. If you use one of these quotes, you need to copy the whole thing and the person's name and put it at the front of your essay like a hook. Okay, so you could find a famous quote and put it in there if you wanted to. After your hook, you're going to have your body paragraphs. So your introduction is your hook and your controlling idea, and it might have a bridge sentence or some sort of a transition that says, keep reading and you'll find out more about this topic or something like that. Now here's the body paragraphs. Each body paragraph starts with a topic sentence. It's the first sentence in the paragraph and it states the topic of the paragraph. For example, if your first paragraph is about how tractors have changed over time, then you're going to want to say that. You're going to want to start with tractors have changed a lot over the last 100 years. Let me tell you about how they've changed. Okay. Then you're going to include evidence. This is where you're going to copy things out of the book or restate the ideas, paraphrase them, or list some facts. Okay. And then a closing sentence kind of leads you from one topic to the next. So if you're going from how tractors change to how cars change, you'd probably say something like, if you think tractors changed a lot, wait until you learn about how much cars changed or something like that. Or tractors were not the only thing that changed. All right, then you go into the conclusion at the end. It summarizes the main ideas of the piece of the writing, it ties it all together. When you're planning your conclusion, remember you restate your controlling idea or your thesis, and you write a closing statement that leaves your reader with something interesting to think about. Mila?
What was the third body paragraph writing about? I know we're writing about cars and tractors. What was the third one?
I'll show you in just a minute. I have actually made a Google Doc that I'm going to share with you that I think might help. Okay. So here's the graphic organizer that they gave you in the book. I actually recommend you do not use this one. You can if you want to. This is the one all filled out for her essay on water. She's just kind of showing you an example of how you might fill out this graphic organizer. You'll notice that it's not the whole essay, but it's a lot of like the evidence. She didn't put all the quotes in here. She just listed things she's going to talk about. So if you were reading through the stories, you would pull the evidence in and just kind of list what evidence you're going to use. All right. So the thing that you're turning in on Monday can be this little amount of writing if you want. What I recommend, though, is that you use the one that I made for you. This is the same one. I took all those things that they had written on that other paper and put them on here. The reason I recommend you use this one, and I'm going to share it with you in a minute, and I'm going to share it with you with a link that makes you make your own copy that you can edit. So I'll take this link and put it into the chat. If you use this one, then when you're done listing your evidence and your thesis and everything, you'll be able to erase the red stuff and just start writing your essay, and half of it will already be written. So right now I'm going to work with you on this. I'm going to make a copy. So to make a copy, you just go to the top, you go file and you go make a copy. Oh, it's not going to let me. Why is it not going to let me? Huh. That's weird. Am I not logged in? I'm probably not logged in. Nope, I'm not logged in. So it does that to you. If you wait too long, it logs you out, which is super annoying. Now I'm going to go up here to File, and I'm going to do Make a Copy. So you should do that too. And when you make a copy, you should see how it says put your name on it. So you're going to want to make a copy, and then you're going to want to retitle it with your name. So up at the top, I want you to change it. This will be Ms. Law's Example. So right now, if you go in the chat, you should be able to get a copy of this doc and put your name on it. Leave the mod 4 informational essay part up here. And then let's get started. So here's our prompt. Tracing the tractors. So here's the prompt that you're writing to. Tracing the tractor's legacy and the car catalyst discuss two different modes of transportation and how they have changed over time. Using the text, explain how transportation changed the world. Use evidence from the text to support your response. So if you look at that, they're asking you to discuss two different modes of transportation and how they've changed over time. Now, you could do that in one paragraph. You could have one paragraph about how they changed over time. And then you need to also have, or you could do it in two paragraphs, one about the tractor and one about the car. Then using the text, explain how transportation changed the world. So I would say this is your third paragraph or your third and fourth if you want to split it into how tractors change the world and how cars change the world. So you could have one paragraph about the tractor, one paragraph about the car, and then one paragraph about how they changed over time. Mila, this is the part I was going to show you that might be helpful. Right here, it talks about the things that you're going to do. So tractors have changed, cars have changed, and how transportation, both tractors and cars, have changed the world. If it were me, I'd make those.
Those are only 4.
Well, those are 3. How tractors have changed, how cars have changed, how transportation. And then you have an introduction and a conclusion. So to me, that would be your 5-paragraph essay. Does that make sense? So you have an introduction is your first paragraph, and your last paragraph is your conclusion. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you don't have to do it that way, but this is what I'm recommending. So the very first thing you have to come up with on your graphic organizer that you have to submit on Monday, and if you decide to submit this, that's great. I don't think I've made it so that you can submit this one, but maybe I'll go check. But you could submit a piece of text that just says, Ms. Laws, I already shared it with you. And make sure you share it with me. It says graphic organizer to submit on Monday. 1, the hook sentence. So here you're going to want to come up with something exciting to say about transportation. So I'm working on my copy, not the one you had. So hopefully this won't mess up your copy. Yeah, this is Ms. Law's copy. Okay. So the hook sentence here, let's say I'm going to say, when I think about transportation, and I think, so what? I guess I would say this. Think about how often you jump in the car and whiz and zoom across town. Now, remember that 100 years ago, this would be an all-day trip with a horse and buggy. Transportation has really changed how we live our lives. Okay, so that is that's my hook. And then this is my thesis. Transportation has really changed our lives. And I'm going to prove to you that it's really changed our lives. Okay. I could have done that completely differently. I could have done a question. Did you know that 100 years ago, to grow food, a farmer had to walk behind a cow and pull a plow by hand? So that's an interesting question. It's also some facts that I learned from the story. And then maybe my thesis in this one, my controlling idea is that life today is so much easier due to improvements in transportation. Okay, so that's a different thesis, but do you see what I'm asking myself? Like, what do I think about with this topic? What's interesting about it? What do I want to say? All right, so on yours right now, I recommend you open up that Google Doc, you go in and you start filling these things in. Now, if it were me, I'd probably fill it in with black writing so that it doesn't all come out red. And then when I write my essay, all I'm going to have to do at this point is get rid of the red things, and I've got my introduction written. It's all there. So this is why I'm saying use this graphic organizer, because then you can just go erase, erase, and you've got your introduction. Now, I'm going to talk about, in my topic sense, I'm going to repeat the thesis and the specific topics. So I'm going to say, my topic is life today is so much easier. And my first body paragraph is about tractors. One of the ways, the ways that life is so much easier today is due to the way tractors have changed the world. Okay, now I'm going to come up with 3 pieces of evidence about tractors and how they changed over time. Oh, I don't want change the world, and how they have changed. Okay, so this is all going to be about tractors and the way they got better and how that affects life today. And then I'm going to go to my second body paragraph, and I might even put in some pieces of evidence here because I can remember some from the story. If I went back to the story, I highlighted a part at the start that said that tractors made us able, tractors were first just pulled by cows, then had riding seats, and finally engines that have improved. So that's kind of how it changed as tractors changed, more people wanted them. When lots of people got tractors, they were able to farm more land. Now, if it were me doing this, I would be looking back in the story to see what the facts were that I highlighted. And I might even do this and we're going to talk about this a little bit next week. But if I pulled something from one of the stories, I might say, in the story, what's the name of the tractor one? Do you guys remember the name of that story?
Tracing the Tractor's Legacy.
Tracing the Tractors. In the story, Tracing the Tractor's Legacy, the author says, and you might even put it in as a quote like this. You can include the exact words if you put this in front of them, if you spell it right. Okay? And then you're going to want a closing or transition sentence that's something like, now that you've learned about how tractors changed over time, about how tractors changed, it is time to talk about cars. And then my second body paragraph is going to be all about cars. My final body paragraph is going to be all about how did this change the world? And then I'm going to have a conclusion. Okay? So today's work is just to work on this. If you have any questions about it or you don't have access to it, let me know. It should make you make a copy. Has everybody opened it right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Mila, question.
Can we also talk about like the bad effects of transportation or something?
Yes, although the stories didn't have a lot of the bad effects in them, and we are supposed to be basing it off the story, but the place, well, let me ask you this. Where in an essay would be a good place to introduce kind of your own thoughts?
I don't know.
At the conclusion. So remember at the conclusion, you could say, now that you've learned about tractors and the way it changed life, it's important to ask ourselves, what sort of bad effects have there been from transportation as well? right? And there you might talk about it a little bit, because even though it made everything easier, that had a flip side, right? We were able to plow more land, and that's what caused the Dust Bowl. We started using like all these fertilizers and things, and that has caused tons of pollution. So there are bad effects, but those bad effects were not discussed in the stories. So you won't discuss them in the main part of the essay. Okay. So one thing to learn about a literary essay like this, something that's based on readings, is you need to stick to what it said in the reading and not make things up or not do extra research on it for this one, because this is not a research essay. Not really. This one is an informative essay to explain the information you learned in the two stories. Does that make sense? If you get stuck at all, let me know. I know I went through a lot really fast right there. Remember, you've got that link to get this document that you can use. If you can't find the document for whatever reason, you can always go to the assignment, back to the assignment in the book. And if you go back to language arts and you click on modules, then you're going to find this informational writing unit. And what you're going to find is that each day as we've had lessons, I've been putting them in here. So here's the assignment, here's reading and taking notes. Here's the link to that Google Doc I just gave you that you can use as your graphic organizer. And today we just did structure of this essay, and I'll put in this recording. So if you get stuck and you want to watch this again, you can watch it again. You can stop it and fast forward it. All right, I'm going to stop my share. Today, before you leave, I'd like you to have started on your graphic organizer. You should have a thesis statement. You should maybe have all three of your topics that you're going to talk about written down. Okay. And you're welcome to use the three that I came up with. Like the first paragraph, it could be about how cars or tractors have changed. The second one about how tractors have changed. And the third one about how they changed the world. I'll set up breakout rooms. I'm going to recreate them to about, how many of you are there? There we go. And assign them automatically. We're not going to work with partners today because we're not. And if you have questions, I'll probably come through the rooms and check and see how you're doing. Okay. Any other questions, Mila?
Yeah. Could you send like the link to the Google Doc that of like the things you wrote for like an example?
Sure. But don't use mine. I'm going to make
Yeah.
I'm going to make it so you can't.
But
edit.
can we use the topics?
Yeah, you can use them. Just don't use my words, right? But if it's helpful to see mine, then yes.
Yeah, I just find it easier to have an example.
Right. And there is an example in the book. Let's see, restricted. Let me fix it. Anyone with the link, viewer, copy link. Okay. So let me show you this because it's kind of interesting. So if you go to the lesson, I will give you my example, but they always give you an example in the book, and here's how you find it. If you go to the lesson, you go to language arts and you go to mod 4, and then you go back to that anywhere in mod 4, any of the lessons, you go to that resource file up at the top and you click on it. You're going to see when you finally get to it that it has an exemplar. An exemplar is an example. So when you open it, it has the essay that somebody wrote as an example. So here you've got like a hook sentence, a topic about how transportation has changed. You've got 1, 2, 3 body paragraphs and a conclusion. So this is an example that you can always look at, but I will put mine into the chat right now too. So chat and oops, where's the chat? There it is. And to everybody, and here's my example. Great. And good job, Mila, being on top of it. So today, you have the weekend, and you have Monday to finish this. It's due on Monday. Okay?
Okay.
All right.